Hello YouTube world, welcome back to the workshop. Because I had so much fun last week with texture and colouring, I thought I'd do a little bit more. But this week I'm going to use some sycamore. There was somebody in the village was cutting down some sycamore about 2 years ago. I went round and asked the arborists or tree surgeons, whatever they are these days, if I could take some, and he told me to help myself. Unfortunately they already logged it, but there was still some quite big pieces there. So the first thing I'm going to do, put it on the bandsaw, cut it into a circular shape, and then I'll remount it on the lathe, and you can rejoin me then. Well, I've set my bowl blank up, I've cut it into circular shape on the bandsaw, and I'm holding it on the screw chuck in my 4 jewels, and I brought up the revolving centre on the other side. So it's just a matter now of just working my way around, just taking it all down and forming the bowl shape that I want. So it's just a process now of working my way through. Now that is the first time I've ever turned sycamore, and what an incredible smooth finish that is on there. So what I'm using here is a black chestnut spirit stain in the airbrush, and what I want to do is come in there quite thick black, just then I'm going to fade that into red there, and then I'm going to have a thick black line back up there. So I'm going to turn the lathe right down, that's around 500. So I'll try that. There's the red. Got a bit of a line on the other side, I just need to blend that in a little bit more. That's a lot better. Well, that's the colour all done. I'm just going to put some sand sealer on there and put some wax on, and I was going to sand that off on the bottom there, but I quite like the way that colour's sort of leached across there, and I've got a little motif in the middle. I quite like that. So I'm just going to quickly sand it down, 600, sand and sealer and some polish. Spread that nice and evenly across there. And a nice clean bit of cloth just to buff that up. Quite pleased with that. Right, I'm going to turn it around, hollow the bowl in now. So, the tools are all sharpened, all ready to go. What I'm going to do is just go in there with a Forstner bit, because I want to put a medallion in the bottom of there, so it's important that I don't get too low, so it's a lot easier to set the depth if you go in with a Forstner bit. Right, so that's drilled out the Forstner bit to the required depth. I have to say, this new lathe, the quill on there has increments etched into the quill in imperial and metric, which makes it so much easier when you're trying to go down to a set depth like that. So that's my small feature I need sanding. That's the bowl. That needs tidying up a little bit in there. I'll get and sand that down, I'll get and tidy that up, and I'll get back to you. Then I have I'm not even sure what make this is, might be Hamlet texturing tool, and you can do some pretty nice things with it. And that's how I put that nice star pattern on the other side. So I'm going to do the same on here. So it would be on the centre height, the lathe just under 500, and what I do is I go in there, and then as I come out I just gradually tip it over. And I've got quite a nice star pattern in there. So what I'll do, I'll just go in, because obviously that's ripped the wood, so I'll just go in with a bit of sandpaper, put that, take the rough spots off of there with a piece of fine sandpaper. And now what I'm going to do is go in with the paint, and I want to spray all of that black. I'll turn the lathe back down for this. That's about 300. Don't want much more than that. So down for air and then back for paint. And now I'm just going to replicate what I did on the outside. So black in there. And then the red. This time, just to lighten that up, I'm just going to put a little bit of yellow in the middle. That's better. I think I've got a too thicker, darker. There's a real hard defining line there, which I don't want, and also there you want the colours to just gently fade into each other rather than just stop and go from one to the other. So I'm just going to get a fine piece of sandpaper and just let me take that down there. Black, back with the black. Nope, hit that with the red again. Much better like that. So now just put a bit of sand and sealer on there. It just also helps to blend all the colours in. Fine sandpaper and wax. I'm starting to get colour reflected in there now. Like I said before, now you know you've got really good shine when you're getting colour reflected. What I'm going to do with that central boss is I'm going to put this gilding wax, silver gilding wax. Now what I want to do is put this on very thinly with a lathe spinning, because what I want to do is go over the top and not go down in all of those. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it in reverse, because if I did that forward, that would be pushing that into there. So I'm going to do that in reverse, and hopefully that should skim just over the top of there, cover that top boss and leave all the black lines. So all I want is a tiny little bit for that. Some on there. That's pretty much what I'm looking for, and I'm just going to put some on this top rim as well. That's pretty much what I'm looking for. So there we have Sycamore bowl, airbrushed, reds, yellows, blacks, the silver gilt boss in the middle, and the silver rim. Well, there we go, YouTube world. Another project. I'm quite pleased with that. I've never turned Sycamore before. It's always really put me off because it always seems such bland wood, no real sort of markings or anything. But that's taking that colour lovely, and you can still see a lot of the grain through that yellow. And that sands up. That's so unbelievably smooth. I wish you could feel that, in fact, because that is so smooth. Unbelievably smooth. In the fashion industry, if you copy somebody else's work, it's a rip-off or a knock-off. Whereas in the world of art, if you copy somebody else's work, it's called a pastiche, which is done in the style of. I first saw Nick Hager do this, something very similar to that. Viking bowl, I think he calls it. So that is very much in the style of that. I do quite like the way that black, I wasn't saying that off, but I quite like the way that black is leached across there. It does give it a bit more character, I think, in the wood. Well, that's been it for another week. As always, I've been Steve Howe, and that is what I call a great day in the workshop. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.